Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. So for today's video, I have some dollar store decor idea and hacks, and I am so excited to show you all of the beautiful things that are super duper easy to make. Today's video is sponsored by Canon. A big thank you to them. And before we get started, I do want to ask that you hit that subscribe button, because once you hit subscribe, we instantly become best friends. Please go ahead and hit that notification bell. Make sure you set them to all. YouTube may or may not let you know when I post a video, but just in case I don't, follow me on Instagram, and let's go ahead and get started. For this craft, I'm going to be using an 8x10 canvas from the dollar store. They do have different sizes, so you pick whatever works for you. I'm going to remove the staples using an upholstery staple remover. You can get this at any hardware store. You can also cut this down, but I really wanted to keep this intact so it's easier to put the canvas back on. I removed the wood frame and kept the outside. We're just going to set this to the side because we're going to use both of these pieces later. Now I'm going to print a picture using my Canon PIXMA TS9521C. If you're a crafter, this printer is definitely for you. It supports 12x12 printing, so you can always make custom scrapbooking paper or print out pictures, which is what I'm doing. And it has 5 individual color tanks, so even if you're low on one color, it's still going to print super vibrant like this picture right here. I printed my picture using Canon's light fabric iron-on because I'm going to transfer this onto the canvas. I have the canvas face down on the picture. The image is actually flipped. Since the image is reversed, once you transfer this over, it's going to be facing the correct way. Take whatever iron you have, and I am doing the back side first just so my image doesn't move around. I'm then going to flip this over, add the sheet that comes in the light fabric iron-on pack, and then heat it up. This sheet is mainly to protect my iron so that those red marks don't transfer over. Heat it up according to the directions on the package, and once it's cool, start peeling. If there's any resistance at all, then heat it up again, wait till it cools, and then start peeling again until your image is completely on the canvas. You'll notice that now her little hat is the right way. I'm going to take the wood from the canvas and put it back on the back and then start to reassemble. You can use a staple gun to put this back together or hot glue. In my case, I used hot glue. Make sure that you are positioning this right where all the folds were and that you're pulling really tight so that this looks really nice when you flip it over. Tuck those corners in, and if they're too bulky, cut them down, and this is what it looks like. For this next one, I'm using these scarves from the dollar store. You can pick whatever pattern you'd like, but because this one is woven, it's nice and stretchy, and that's going to come in handy when crafting. I also really like the pattern, but that's totally up to you. So I spread it out, and I actually bought 2 of these because the other one is going right on top of this one. Make sure that the fringe area is perfectly aligned, and you're going to want to keep it nice and straight. You can either use a sewing machine, hand stitch, or you can use hot glue or any type of fabric glue. I'm going to try and keep this as straight as possible, and this is really easy with this pattern because it basically has the lines there for you. To avoid burning myself, I'm using a ruler just to push this down. Because this is woven, the glue has a tendency of seeping through, so just have something on hand so you can push this down. This definitely takes a little longer than you would expect using the hot glue. If you have a sewing machine, use that. It will save you a ton of time. But like I said, I like to keep it easy on this channel because I know a lot of people do not have all of these supplies. Before you move on, make sure that you pull on it to make sure all pieces are glued together. And when you get right here, do not glue that. Flip it over and then do the same thing on the other side, making sure that you do not glue where the fringe is. We made it! We got all the way to the end, and now it's time to flip it over. If your glue lines are nice and straight and nothing is seeping out, you don't have to do this, but this just gives it a much cleaner look. and looks like you actually sewed it. Now it's time for the fun part. I'm gonna use an old body pillow. You can also just stuff this with an old blanket or whatever you'd like. So I'm just gonna cover up this body pillow. I like the pattern on the body pillow, but I couldn't find my dingy one, so this is just my way of making it over. Look at that stretch. I bet if you saw these in stores, you wouldn't think that you'd be able to stretch it this far without it looking all funky. Now, the reason I told you not to glue is because we're just gonna tie this together. Tying it together gives you the option of just taking this off with no issue. If you really want, you can sew the other end, but I felt like this would make it a lot easier to pull and push on whatever it is you're stuffing this with. This is what you have when you're done tying, and I think it looks pretty darn good. One thing you can always count on from the dollar store are glass faces. So I got this one, and I'm gonna use a bowl and some baking soda. You do not have to paint it like this, but I really wanted to give this a pottery look. And you definitely do want to paint it if you want to go for the effect that I'm trying to go for here. So you want this thick consistency, and I'm using a foam brush so that it's easier to get it on. You want to go in one direction so that this looks like pottery. And this is going to take about 3 coats, so make sure it's really dry before you move on to the second coat, or else you're just kind of going to lift this off. Ta-da! This is what we're left with. It did take a whole day to dry. So now I'm going to take a cup and fill it with water. And this is something that I've been wanting to try for a while. I will link the channel that I saw did it with actual ceramic glaze. This is soap that I'm adding, and then I'm adding food coloring. In the original video, which I will link below, they just did this with glaze, which of course is going to last longer. But if you're using fake flowers, it really doesn't matter. You're going to mix this up until it creates bubbles. Now, I will tell you, I got a little excited and I filled that cup up way too much, and you'll see it right here. Look at all that spillage. Why? Why did I do that? So if you do recreate this, make sure you use a very small amount of water. Take your vase, your vase, however you like to pronounce it, and swirl it around. I really like just pressing it into the bubbles, and every time the bubbles looked dull, I added a few more drops of the food coloring, and I think that that gave it a better effect. And this is what you're left with. I found this adorable wall hanging thing that looks like a little mini wreath, and these 3D wreath forms. These bring like 5 or 6 hoops, and I'm going to take them apart and use them as single wreath forms. So I'm going to remove one of those little loops and keep the other one so that I can hang it up. Make sure that you are flattening that out so that you don't get cut, and then put this on. So the reason I like doing this is because those single thin wreath forms are actually pretty pricey. So doing this, you get like 5 of them, and they're actually a pretty nice size. Now I'm going to take some floral, and instead of using floral tape or hot glue, I'm using little mini zip ties. This is a game changer because not only is it easier to use, but you can always cut this down and reuse your floral and your hoop over and over and over again. So because these are so small, they're really easy to hide, so you can hide them in between your floral, which helps you shape your floral how you want on your wreath. Then cut down the stems. Now is when I add a little bit of hot glue, but it's honestly not necessary. this is just in case. Now I'm gonna make a ribbon. This is pretty simple. I'm just cutting down 2 pieces of equal sizes. So I'm gonna use the first one to measure out the second piece of ribbon, and then I'm gonna hot glue each one just to close it up. With those 2 pieces, I'm just gonna scrunch it up, and I'm gonna place one on top of the other and just figure out how I like it. A lot of people like to add different patterns of ribbon. Now, instead of using hot glue, I'm also using a mini zip tie. For this whole project, I tried to use the mini zip ties because if I want to take this apart and use the ribbon for something else, totally can. For the bottom of the ribbon, I'm doing something similar where I'm just scrunching it up and adding it with my little mini zip tie and then shaping it. Those little tails, I'm just folding them in half and then making a little slit so that it looks adorable. This part is totally optional. In fact, everything here is totally optional. The only part that I am going to be using hot glue is right there in the middle so that I can cover that up. So I'm just cutting a small piece of ribbon and I'm folding it up so that you don't see the edges, and then I'm just covering the front. Now you're only going to add hot glue onto itself so that you can take it apart and reuse it. And now I'm adding hot glue to that. So the glue is only ending up on the little ribbon, and this is it. When I saw these candle holders, I absolutely fell in love. They come in multiple patterns, so you have plenty of options. This is just a regular shipping box. I like the shape of it, so it's perfect for this project. I'm going to cut off the flaps on the inside. Make sure that you don't puncture the box. I'm also going to tape off the edges and the bottom because I don't want anything seeping out just in case I did create a puncture. Now I'm just going to measure out the candle holders. I chose 5 because that's how big my box is. I wouldn't have been able to fit 6, and 4 would have looked a little funky. And now I'm going to mark them where I think is the middle. If you want to be super precise, you can measure this out. I wanted this to look very, very organic, so I really wasn't concerned for having them perfectly aligned. Now I'm gonna mix up some cement. This was done in the front yard of my house, and my neighbors definitely looked at me like I was crazy, but it's totally worth it in the end. So I'm gonna mix this up by hand, but if you have a drill, use that. I keep it simple on my channel so that everybody can see that if you don't have tools, you can do this too, but this is time consuming by hand. I kept adding water until I got the consistency of almost cake batter. I should have stopped right here, but I kept mixing cement and mixing cement. I don't know what I was thinking, but this stuff set really quick. So by the time it was time for me to pour, this was already, yeah. Leveling this out was a little difficult because this was already starting to set. I didn't read, but this stuff sets in 15 minutes, so it's not perfectly leveled. The corners are a little funky, but before it dried, I added my candle holders so that they stay in there, and I let them dry really well. I've seen a ton of videos of people working with cement and making these gorgeous planters, and it always looks so easy to remove these things from the boxes that they're using. And I'm here to tell you that you are gonna work. I'm using a sanding sponge, which is also from the dollar store, and this is just to clean up some of the areas that are already going to come off. If you really want to smooth out concrete, this is not the tool. You're definitely going to need something heavy duty. This is just to get some areas around the candle holder that you can tell are going to flake off anyway. The real reason I'm using this is for the sides with the cardboard. For the cardboard that's still sticking on for dear life, I used a wet rag and then I used my sanding sponge to remove it. You can actually wet your sanding sponge, so this made it really easy, but like I said, this one took a little bit of work. I did leave some of the cardboard at the bottom so it wouldn't scrape my table, but I really, really love this. You can put the glass back on. I left it without, and this is perfect and super sturdy for outdoor decor. So that's it for me. I really, really hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments which one is your favorite. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up. And as usual, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.